Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
Hello everyone. So now students, let's move on to our next chapter, that is chapter number 16, in which we are going to discuss the map work. Now I know that many of you are really afraid of the map work here. So let us try to understand that whatever we have learned in all the chapters, what are the map works that we need to focus on. Okay, so one by one we are going to have a look at all the maps. We will try to understand that what these maps are trying to show. We will try to understand that what is the significance of all the maps that we are looking forward to here in this topic, in this chapter, that is map work. Okay, so when we are talking about the first map here that you will find in your chapter number 16, it is talking about the map that shows the global distribution of early men. Now students, going back to the prehistorical period where we do not have any written records, but yes, we do have oral histories, we do have different places. Excavation has been carried out at different places by the archaeologists in order to understand that where did early men they live on this whole planet, in this world that we are talking about. So here we are talking about the hominids, we are talking about the Homo sapiens. Today we have the modern form of Homo sapiens, which we call as human beings, that we are here, right, in the having different moderations in their physical form, in the mental form, and so on. So when we are talking about the period that is circa 3 lakhs, not in fact 3 lakhs, more than that, when we are talking about this period, that is BP. Now the term that you're looking in the map is BP, which means before the past. So here whenever we are talking about history, students, you know that the present that we are living in, the past that we are talking about, the future that we can think about keeps on changing. Right. So when we are talking about the past, before the past, not before the present. So when we are talking about the past here, it means that we are talking about the period where we were not living, but we can definitely understand what were the things happening there. So looking at the world map here, you can see that we are talking about the Australopithecines. So here the region that they were living in is the parts of Africa. This is the African continent that we are talking about, right? And before hominids, we see that we have this form of here, this form that is known as Australopithecines. Now, if we look at the second map here, we are talking about Homo erectus. Now, here students, you already have learned about the different forms in which human beings, they have evolved. Right. So when we are talking about the hominids, we are talking about the family of great apes here. Right. So if we are talking about chimpanzees, if we are talking about orangutans in today's day, when we are talking about monkeys, whenever we are talking about the genre of that family, they come under the umbrella term here, that is the hominids, right? And when we are talking about Homo sapiens, we know that our ancestors, they were the great apes. So we are talking about these species here who were evolving in different parts of the world. Now, when we are talking about Homo erectus, just look at the time period here. So this is the time period that is circa 5 lakh to 2 lakhs BP. That means before the present. At that particular time, if you look at the expansion that was happening in the map here, we see that in the African region, all these people who were living, the early humans or the early forms of the human beings that were living here, they started expanding in different regions of Asia. Now, if you look at the map here closely, you will see that parts of India, Saudi Arabia, right? So parts of Central Asia, these are the regions where you can find that how they were expanding their horizon. When we are talking about Homo sapiens, just have a look at the map here. Just leaving this part, that means that we are talking about the western part of the African continent here. We see that almost everywhere the Homo sapiens, they had been spreading. Whether we are talking about the Australian continent, whether we are talking about South America, whether we are talking about North America, whether we are talking about the whole Asian continent, Eurasian continent here, we see that how Homo sapiens, that is the modern form of human beings that we are today. So you can understand about the moderation, you can understand that how they started living at one place, then they started moving to different places, and at the same time, different features were coming together, or let's say different features were evolving in human beings, and today we take the shape or form that we call ourselves. And the physical, the mental, the emotional, and every aspect that we can think about, all things were changing from that period to the present period that we are living in today. Okay, now take a look at the second map here. The second map here, it talks about the early world population growth. Now again, when the term comes early world, here you need to understand that we are talking about the early men. Somewhere you already have learned since your childhood about the early men who were hunter gatherers. You have learned that how they started growing crops, they became farmers, they started living a settled life. So you can see the moderation happening in phases here. So when we are talking about the world population growth here, what do we see? Just look at the map to understand. So we are talking about the early Paleolithic hominids. Now the term Paleolithic, are you aware about it? You can say, yes ma'am, we are aware about it. Definitely we are aware about it. How? So when we are talking about Paleolithic, it means that we are talking about the early Stone Age period. This is the Stone Age period that we are talking about, and during this period, it means that we are talking about these many years ago. What happened exactly? In the regions of Africa. We are not talking about India at this moment. We are talking about the region of Africa, all over the world. So here we see that in the African continent, here the area, the major population of hominids, they were living here. Now, when we are talking about the assumed density per square kilometer, it means that in 1 kilometer square, how many people they were living together here, right? So you can see the number here. Now, when we are talking about the total population, it is 0.125 millions, right? Now, here when we are talking about the world of Homo sapiens, as in we are talking about the hunters 10,000 years ago, as they moved forward and started gaining different features, whether they saw themselves as hunters, whether they were trying to accommodate in the environment that they were living in, we see how the population started growing, because people, they started moving from one place to another, and they came in contact with all the other people who were living in different parts of the world. So here we see a gradual increase in the population that leads to 5.32 millions, the total population here. Right. Now, moving to the next part of the map here, we see that again, changes were happening. Don't forget that changes were not happening because the early men, they were trying to accommodate in the environment that they were living in. So firstly, they were seen as hunters, gatherers, which you have already learned. Later on, they became farmers. They started practicing agriculture. So they started leading a settled life. So if we look at the map here, just focus on the growth of population in millions. 133 million. Almost these many people, they were living all around the world here. Now later on, when we are talking about the Homo sapiens in 1950, now we have come to the present period. So you are already aware about the term that is BC, that is before Christ, or the birth of Christ. When we are talking about AD, it means that after Anno Domini, or after the death of Christ. Right. And today when we are talking about the present period, we are talking about the years such as 1950. When we are talking about the population growth here, we see that there is a tendency of increase in the population. Rather than decreasing, it is increasing. So here if you look at the population curve, you will see that 10,000 years ago till the present, it remains stagnant, and the curve starts growing. The population is growing and growing. If we try to look at the curve, the graph where we are talking about the population and the years. Okay. Now looking at the logarithm, you do not need to get into all the aspects here. But what is the basic essence of this map here is that you need to understand that how the hominids, the Homo sapiens, they were trying to live, or they were expanding in all the parts of the world. Okay. Now, talking about the next map here, we are going to understand about the extent of the Roman Empire. Have you heard about the Roman Empire? Yes. Now, this was one of the earliest civilizations in the world. And when we are talking about the Roman Empire, everyone understands the importance of this place. Everyone knows that since ancient ages till the Middle Ages, when we are talking about the expansion of the Roman Empire, we see it in different phases. Now, this map is something where you will not be able to understand the small places here. Right or not? So here, if I look at the Roman Empire, you just need to understand where is Rome? In Europe. If we talk about Rome in today's day, we are talking about the region that is in Europe, right or not? So here, just look at this map. This is the Mediterranean Sea. Now, the same map I am showing, the replica of this map I am showing you in colored version here, so that you can understand. You just need to focus on the extent of the Roman Empire, one of the ancient civilizations here that kept on expanding till the Middle Ages that we are talking about which you have read. So here, if you look at the extent here in the European continent, that is the present European continent here, just look at the extent here. Okay, so this was the region that I am highlighting with the boundaries here. This was the region for the Roman Empire. Okay, and there were a lot of places. For example, when we are talking about the Mediterranean Sea here, just look at the map here. This is the Mediterranean Sea. This is the Baltic Sea. Okay, this is the German Ocean. This is the region of Germania. Here we are talking about the region. These all regions, they were quite important. Okay, so you need to focus on the map, right? So here we see that since the ancient period, the Roman Empire, it kept on extending. It kept on expanding. These were the major regions here, the Black Sea. Why was it so important? Because of the location, because of the rulers who were here, because how it kept on expanding, and it is one of the ancient civilizations of the world. Now, if we look at map number 4 here, this map here, it talks about the decline of the Byzantine Empire. Now, students, when we are talking about the Roman Empire, you just look at this map here in order to, have an idea of the extent of this Roman Empire. But what about Byzantine Empire? Have you heard about it? You might say yes, ma'am. So here, when we are talking about the Byzantine Empire, this was the extension, the eastern extension of the Roman Empire. Okay. So if we look at the map here, just try to focus on the map here. Okay. So here, just look at this region. When we are talking about the extension, the eastern extension of the Roman Empire here, this is the Sahara Desert that we are talking about. The upper part here, this is Corsica, Sardinia. This is the region of Rome, right? Sorry, not Rome, Italy here. Okay, and this is Rome here. And when we are talking about the eastern expansion, you can see how the Byzantine Empire, it extended to these regions here. Later on, you will learn about the Ottoman Empire. You will learn how Byzantine Empire, it was defeated, and so many other things. Okay. So here, when we are talking about the Byzantine Empire, just look at this region. This is the colored version here, Mediterranean Sea that I was talking about. So this is the region of Italy. This is Rome, the capital here, Holy Roman Empire, all these things that you have already understood. Now, this was the region, the eastern expansion here. So it went from a major to minor power after Byzantine. They lost from at the Battle of Manzikert. Okay, so this happened in 1071 against the Seljuk Turks. Okay, so here when we are talking about the region of Syria, when we are talking about the region of Baghdad, that is Iran, Iraq, all those regions here, you see that how they were trying to expand, but suddenly they were declining in power. Why? Because the Seljuk Turks, they waged a invasion against the Byzantine Empire, and it was in 1071 that they lost in this war. Now, the next map that we need to focus on is the expansion of Islam. Now, students, when we are talking about Islam, it is one of the earliest religion that you might have heard about. Now, when we are talking about Islam, you know that the founder of this religion, right? When we are talking about Islam as a religion here, the founder was Muhammad Prophet. You must have heard about Prophet Muhammad, not Muhammad Prophet, Prophet Muhammad, right? So here, just remember that in today's day, if you want to connect to the term, you can talk about Makkah and Medina. You might have heard about Makkah and Medina, right? So here, the region of Saudi Arabia, the present region of Saudi Arabia, this was the place from where Islam, it originated and started spreading to the different parts of the world. So here, you need to understand Islam. The founder was, the Islamic religion, the founder was Prophet Muhammad, who tried to expand the religion among different people or the different parts of the world, and tried that everyone should be inculcating this religion here. So we see that how it expanded to different regions of Central Asia. Now, when I'm talking about the Central Islamic lands, it means that we are talking about how it moved on or it expanded in the eastern part of the world. Eastern part, as in we are talking about the lands, the mainland of China. We are talking about the regions of India. We are talking about the regions of Persia. We are talking about all the regions of Eurasian continent here, that is Europe and Asia. Okay, so here you can see how it started expanding and how people they came to know about this religion. So here, if you want to understand the spread of Islam in a very good way, you can see that how this region is Makkah and Medina, the land, the supreme land, the holy land of Prophet Muhammad, and how it started spreading from the region of Arabia to the region of Afghanistan, moving on to the parts of India, also trying to expand to the region of Byzantine Empire, trying to expand to the region of Maghreb, trying to expand to the region of kingdoms of France. This is the Holy Roman Empire. Okay, now these were the non-Islamic kingdoms. Here, this was the region, the orange region that I'm talking about was the Islamic world under Muhammad. When we are talking about the territory that was added by the caliphates, so it was the yellow color that you are looking at here. When we are talking about the green color, the sea green color, they were added by Umayyad caliphs. And here these were the regions that were not exactly under, but yes, it tend to spread on to all these regions of the Holy Roman Empire and the parts of Byzantine Empire. Now, you already have learned about the Holy Roman Empire. Look at the eastern extension of the Holy Roman Empire, that is the Byzantine Empire. Just do not forget all these terms that you are learning here. Okay, now let's talk about the next map here, that is the map that shows the Mongol Empire after the death of Kublai Khan. Now, students, when we are talking about the Mongol Empire, again, have you ever heard about the term? Have you heard about the founder of Mongol Empire, Genghis Khan? You might have heard about it, right? So here, when we are talking about the region that was under the Mongol Empire, again, one of the most important empires in the world in Central Asia, the highlands here that we are talking about under Genghis Khan, this empire, the Mongol Empire, was one of the most powerful empires in the world during this period. So when we are talking about the Central Asia region here, just look at the map. This is the region of Europe. You know, you do not need to focus on this. But here, when we're talking about the Central Asian plains, okay, the Central Asian highlands, not plains in fact. So this was the region of Persia, okay. Then we are talking about the Golden Horde. We are talking about the region that was above India, okay. We are talking about the region of China. So this was the Central Asian region where Mongol Empire it was ruling. Now let us try to have a good image of the Mongol Empire. Just look at this part. Okay, I'll just focus here on the Golden Horde, the Khanate of the Golden Horde. We are talking about the Khanate of the Great Khan, the Genghis Khan that we are talking about. You can see that how he started expanding the region. This was the Central Asian region here. How he expanded his region, the Mongol Empire in different parts of the world. So he started moving to the parts of India. Okay, then he started moving to different areas. Here, the region of Baghdad. You can see this is the region of Persia, right? Afghanistan. Okay, when we are talking about this region here, so this is the Asian continent that we are talking about. This was the region that you need to focus on while talking about the Mongol Empire. This is a colorful image, colorful map here, making you understand the extent of the Mongol Empire. And when we are talking about after the death of Kublai Khan, we see that how it started expanding in different regions of the world. Okay, so as you can see, these are the images that you need to focus on, right? So how it expanded. This is our Indian continent, and above it we have the Central Asian region. Okay. Now, looking at map number 7, when we are focusing on map number 7, just have a look at the actual. This map here shows the actual status of European in AD 1500. Now here, students, you need to focus on certain things. When we are talking about Europeans, it doesn't mean that we are talking about one section here. It means that all over Europe, there were different principalities, different empires that were ruling in different regions. They had their own areas, they had their own rulers, they had their people, and also how they were trying to wage war in different areas and trying to make themselves powerful. So you already have learned about the Holy Roman Empire, right? You have learned about the Byzantine Empire. Now this is the Ottoman Empire that we are talking about. So here when we are talking about the map or the status of the, one second, when we are talking about the actual status of the European here, let's enlarge the image in order to understand. So if you look at the present day map of Europe, you will find a lot of differences. Right, you'll find different countries that were not existing before in the AD period there. You will find different small regions that were not existing before, or might be the names have been changed. So here, this is the Holy Roman Empire. If I just try to highlight the region, let's try to highlight the region. This is the Holy Roman Empire, okay? Right? Now, this is the region of France. You can just look at the atlas and try to identify all these regions. This is the region of Portugal. This is the region of Spain that you will find today, but areas might have changed. This is the Mediterranean Sea that we have already talked about. This is the Ottoman Empire that we are talking about here. This is the Black Sea, very important. This is the region of Poland. And when we are talking about all these regions here, the parts of Russia, this is the part of Russia. But during 1500 AD, we see that many things had changed. Okay, so here the most important part to focus is on the Holy Roman Empire. Try to understand the extent of the Holy Roman Empire. Try to understand the importance of Holy Roman Empire. Try to understand what were the different regions here. Okay, so these are the small states of Holy Roman Empire. This is the region of France, Spain, Portugal. You can see that this was happening in the year of, or let's say 1500 AD. So here, Osmania, or when we are talking about the region, that is the Ottoman Empire. Just if I color this region, you need to understand that it was the Ottoman Empire that we are talking about. When you learn Moscow, it means that we are talking about the Russia region. This is the Lithuania region. This is the Poland region. So these are some small areas that existed during this period. This is the region of England, Portugal, Spain, you already have learned about. So you can see that today's map, this is southern Italy, this is northern Italy, but today we know this as the region of Italy here. Right or not? So here when we are talking about the present day map, definitely you will find a lot of changes. So the Holy Roman Empire that existed during 1500 AD is no more existing here. Right? Now let us try to understand about the next map here, that is, one second. So this map here shows the Amerindians Empire on the eve of Spanish conquest. Now students, before understanding about the Spanish conquest, you need to understand the Europeans who were quite powerful during this period. Okay, so when we're talking about the Europeans here, everyone understood that this region, old region, is talking about the regions of Europe. So here we are talking about Spanish people, we are talking about the Portuguese, we are talking about the French, we are talking about the English people, we are talking about the Romans, we are talking about Ottomans, we are talking about all these regions cumulatively. And we know that Europeans, they were the powerful region. This was a powerful region, and also there were so many different powers who were trying to conquer all the other smaller areas all over the world. The idea of colonialism, the idea of imperialism came after that. Now here, when you will read, or when you already have learned about a lot of wars, you have already learned about how people, they were establishing the colonies everywhere. They were trying to establish their supremacy over the regions that were smaller in area, and also the people who were living there were not very much dominant. Okay, so here when we're talking about the European powers, we are talking about the Spanish, we are talking about the Portuguese people, we are talking about the Dutch people, we are talking about the English people, right? We are talking about the French people who were trying to expand their power by invading different regions here. So when we're talking about the Amerindians, as the name or the word here suggests, we are talking about the natives who were the Americans and the Indians. So this was a term referred to the natives known as the Americans and the Indians. Now here you will learn about a lot of civilization. Might be you have learned about the Inca civilization here. There were so many civilizations that were, springing in all these regions. So this is the region of Central America. This is the region of South America. If you look at today's map, you will find that this is the region that we are talking about of Central America and North America, of South America. Okay, so let's have a look. So here when we are talking about this region, I'm just highlighting the region in to make you understand. This is North America. This is the region that is the Central America, connecting it with South America. Now here, this is the region that we are talking about here, right or not? So this is the Inca civilization that we are talking about. American Indians, they were living in this region, the early natives or the tribes that they were living. So the Spanish conquest that we are talking about, it means that Europeans or the Spanish from this region, they came down to this region in order to, wage war against them and establish their colonies over here, that we can see in the map. Okay, so here we are talking about this region. If you look at the colorful map here, and here we are talking about this region, Aztec, Inca, apart from that the Maya civilization. You have heard all these names, right? So this should not be difficult for you to understand. Almost 4 to 5 civilizations, they were springing in this region, and this was the situation of Central America and South America. American Indians who were inhabiting in this region here. The next map number 9, here shows the map that explains the geographical discoveries that happened from AD 450 to 1500. Now students, when you look at the world map, the ancient part or the ancient world map here, you will find a lot of changes here. Just look at the map, just look at the boundaries of different areas, you will definitely look at the changes. So here when we are talking about North America, we are talking about South America, look at different seas and oceans connecting different mainlands here, the land masses here. So here if we are talking about Europe, this is the region of Asia, this is the region of China. Here we are talking about our Indian subcontinent, then we are talking about the region of Australia, we are talking about the continent Africa, this is South America. Okay, now you have identified all the continents here, right or not? So let us try to highlight that what were the discoveries that were taking place. The most important was the sea and the land route connecting different land masses. So here let's focus on our Indian subcontinent. If we are talking about India here, have you ever heard about the Silk Route? The oldest route that existed in the world, from where we see that traders and people, they started, the concept of globalization came through the sea route, all the land routes, when people, they started moving from one place to another in perspective or in prospect of trading different commodities or in the cultural exchange process. So we see that if anything was to be, carried from India, transported from India to other regions of the world, they either use the land route or they use the sea route. So for example, if a person who is living in India had to go to China, they would, choose the land route, that is the mountain passes, in order to go to the region of China. Okay. Now, when we are talking about any commodity that has to be exported from India, for example, in Indian subcontinent, we see that it was famous for the spices. So, let's say from the region of Calicut, if spices, they had to be exported to the regions of Europe, how do we see? What is happening here exactly? We see that how the sea route was used for this purpose. So, it could move via African coast here, and then it could enter the region of Europe here. It could also go to the region of South America. It could also go to the region of North America. So there were so many geographical discoveries that took place because of the exchange of goods, because of the exchange of people that was happening from one place to another, or movement, not exchange, but movement of people or goods that was happening here from one place to another. It led to geographical discoveries in different regions. New continents were found, and in this process, people, they were discovering different cultures. They were talking about different religions. They were trying to inculcate or know about the civilizations that existed all over the world. Right. Now, if we move at the next map here, this is map number 10. So in map number 10, we are seeing the overseas dependencies of Spain and Portugal that happened in 1898. Now, like I already have told you that when we are talking about the European powers, they were now, expanding their reach all over the world through the policy of colonialism, right? So when we are talking about colonialism, you know that in this policy or the process in which what happened exactly, we see that how the European powers, they were trying to, capture or conquer the region, and they were trying to rule that particular region or the people living in that particular region. This was the idea of colonialism. So here when we are talking about Spain and Portugal, what do we see? That how they started expanding to the region of Central America, the Caribbean islands that we can talk about. Then we are seeing how they started, spreading to the region of Africa, right? Parts of Africa that was under Spain and Portugal. Also, we can see the Philippine Islands that was here under the Spanish and the Portugals during the period that is 1898. Now, if we look at map number 11 here, we are talking about the colonial situation about 1689. Now, students, please understand, colonial situation here, it means that this was a policy of expansion or extension that happened. Either it was through diplomacy, either it was through war, when we see that the dominant power here is trying to subjugate over the suppressors or the less dominant power here. They were trying to build the colony in that particular place. For example, if we look at the region of North America and South America here, we see that some certain areas, they were established as colonies where the natives, they were ruled by the foreign powers, and they were trying to do trading activities here, or they were trying to take hold of the administration here, right? So here, this is the part of North America. And when we are talking about the colonies, we see that all the European powers, whether we are talking about the British, whether we are talking about French, whether we are talking about Dutch, Spanish, Portuguese, we see that all these European powers, they were dominant in nature, and they were trying to establish colonies everywhere, all over the world. Whether we are talking about India, where in India, you have already learned in the historical part that how the British Empire, they ruled our country for almost 200 years. So India was a colony to the British Empire. Likewise, when we are talking about North America, when we are talking about South America, we see that how the region, they were trying to establish their colonies in all these different areas. Okay. So here, if for example, just let's take one example. So if you just let me highlight in order to make you understand. Okay. Let's see. So here, focusing on the French colonies. Okay. I'm just focusing on the French colonies, try to see that what were the regions under the French colonies. So if you look at this highlighted region of North America, here we see that this was the region that was under the control of the French people. It means that the natives who were living here, they were, under the control of the French people who had occupied or established this region as their colony. So when we are talking about all these European powers, we see that somewhere this became one of the regions, they wanted to establish their supremacy all over the world. And when we're talking about the British, when we're talking about French, Dutch, they also started fighting among themselves in order to show their supremacy. So for example, if British Empire, they wanted to, challenge the French people here, so they will try to wage a war against the French people and try to take over the colonies that were established by the French people here. Okay. For example, in India also, that all these different, European powers, they came for trading purposes. Be it the Portuguese, be it the Dutch, be it the Spanish people, they all came to India for trading purposes. But when we are talking about the British Empire, we see that all these regions, all the European powers, they fought among themselves in order to establish their supremacy in the Indian subcontinent. And British Empire, it emerged as the victorious power, and all the other powers, they had to just move on from the Indian subcontinent, and it was the British Empire that got the hold of the Indian subcontinent here. Okay. Now, map number 12 here, it focuses on the status of North America between the period that is 1754 to 1763. Now, here we are talking about the period before the Civil War here that took place here in North America, and America's War of Independence after that. Now, here if we look at the map, again, you just need to focus on the British, Spanish and the French colonies here. For example, if you look at the square region here, the crisscross region here, this was under the French. Okay. Now here, when we are talking about the region that is plain here, that is the British Empire. When we are talking about, obviously the image here is faded. So you just need to see that these were the French colonies, and these were the French forts that were established here in order to show the supremacy. These were the regions under the British Empire. When we are talking about the Spanish Empire, the slanted region that you can find, you will see that the Spanish, they were looking forward to this region in the second map here. For example, if you look at this map here, Spanish claim, this was the region of the Spanish claim here. The British territory was, so you can see that how all these European powers, they were trying to establish their supremacy in different regions, and they were fighting among themselves also in order to establish their supremacy. Now, this next map here, map number 13, it focuses or it shows the Australian expansion. So in the southern hemisphere, you know that Australian continent is there. So here when we're talking about the expansion, the Australian expansion here, you know that, you know, the European powers, they also tried to establish their supremacy here, right? So Australia was also under the British Empire, right? So here we see that how they were expanding. Just look at the highlighted region here. Look at these regions, the Central Eastern Lowlands. When we are talking about the region of Melbourne, we are talking about Canberra, this region here. When we are talking about Darwin, this region here. So we see that how they were trying to expand their area. Perth, this is the region of Perth. So this is the status of Australia here. Now moving on to the next map here, map number 14, we are talking about the expansion and contraction of the Japanese power 1931 to 1945. Now students, when we are talking about Japan, we learn the concept of imperialism. So you might be asking, ma'am, imperialism and colonialism, what do we understand by that? We have already learned about it. So you have learned about colonialism, somewhere you have heard about imperialism as well. So here what do we see? In imperialism, what happens? Now this is a policy in which the superior power, they try to extend or establish an empire, right? They try to establish an empire and rule over it. So when we are talking about the region of Japan, just look at the map here and try to look at the extension. So here when we are talking about the region of Japan, right? So what do we see? We see that how they were trying to expand in different regions, okay, trying to expand and establish their empire, okay. So here, if we look at the region of China, as you can see, this is the region of China here. This is the, when we are talking about the Southeast Asian countries. So basically you need to focus on all the Southeast Asian countries, okay. So as you can see, this map here talks about the expansion and contraction of the Japanese power. You need to see how they were expanding through to different regions of China, how they were trying to establish their supremacy in the Southeast Asian countries. Okay. Now, when we're talking about the map 15 here, this map here shows the industry in communist China. Now, students, have you heard about Chinese history? Have you learned about Chinese history? You will say, yes, ma'am. We definitely have learned about the Chinese history here. So, when we're talking about the communist China, that period here when the communist rule was established in this region, we have to look forward to main industries in communist China. So here when you look at the shaded region, now let me highlight it for you. So when we are talking about this region, when we are talking about this region, when we are talking about this region, here, and so many other places. So all the shaded region that you are seeing here, these were the regions, the major industrial areas. Okay. Now here, if I were to tell you that you need to point out some important industrial regions or cities, so you might say, ma'am, Hong Kong, somewhere I can see that. You can see the region of Taiwan here, right? This is North Korea, South Korea. Then we are talking about the region of China. So this is the eastern part. This is the central south, southwest, northwest. So you need to understand that, you know, this is the north region here. Okay, northeastern part here. So you can see in different regions, you can just identify different places. These were the important industrial cities in China and how they were trying to show their expansion. Moving forward to the last map here of this chapter, that is map number 16. We are going to understand about the status of nationalist China, the region of Taiwan here, that is the Formosa. So here students, you have understood that how Taiwan, they were also, you know, for a longer period of time, they also tried to see themselves as part of China. This region has been a region of conflict here when we are talking about the Japanese or when we are talking about the Chinese power. So here if you look at the map, just try to understand that here when we are talking about Taiwan, this is the Philippine Sea, and we are talking about this region. Just focus on that. The highlighted region, you need to focus on that, and you need to understand that this was nationalist China, the Taiwan region, which is also known as the Formosa, about which you already have learned about, right? So these are certain things that you already have learned about, where just looking at the map, you need to focus on the importance. You need to focus on how things were changing all over the world. in different time zones, in different places, how people they were living in these areas since the memorial time that we're talking about, the prehistoric period, about the hominids, homo erectus, to the time that we're talking about how different worlds they started emerging, the new world, the old world, how the civilizations they were trying to move forward, and how changes were happening in all these older civilizations. So I hope that this map has helped you to understand about the things that you've already learned earlier. Thank you so much.